Hi, I'm George Woodbury from College of the Sequoias in Visalia, California, and in this video we'll take a look at interest-related problems, which are really similar to mixture problems, which we've talked about before. The equation that we're going to use is principal times rate, this is the interest rate or profit rate, times time equals interest. So this is a simple interest problem. Later in the course, we'll talk about compound interest, which is definitely a different type of problem. So to shortcut this, PRT equals I. The rate is similar to the strength in the mixture problems. The principal is similar to the volume in those problems. The time is an extra factor that gets multiplied on, but the product is equal to the interest, which is a lot like the volume of alcohol in each solution and the mixture, and that's where our equations will typically end up. An investor invested a total of $6,000 in two stocks. The first stock earned a profit of 10%, and the second stock earned a profit of 15%. If the investor's total profit from these two stocks was $850, how much did she invest in each stock? So interest in this problem, we're talking about profit, but it's done the same exact way. We have two investments and a total. So I'm going to list those down the side, number one, number two, and total. And I'm going to list the principal, the rate, the time, and the profit. Now here it doesn't say, so we'll assume that this is 1 year. It's 1 unit of some time, so we can assume that it's one. The total principal was $6,000. So if the amount invested in the first account was X, which we don't know what it was, the other one has to be 6,000 minus X. It's the total minus whatever went into the first account. The profit on the first account was 10% or 0.10. The second account was 0.15 for 15%. Now it doesn't tell us the overall profit rate for the two investments. So this box is not used in these problems. And that's really the difference from the mixture problems that we talked about in the last video to these interest or profit problems. Again, we'll assume that the time is 1 for each. So principal times rate times time in this case is really just principal times rate. And to get the profit, that's what we multiply. X times 0.10 is the profit from the first account. The second one is going to be 0.15 times 6,000 minus X. And then we know the profit from the total because that was told to us as $850. So the profit from each of the individual investments has to add up to equal 850. That's our equation. 0.10x plus 0.15 times 6,000 minus x equals 850. We'll begin by distributing. With all of these applied problems that we've been doing, notice that that's typically the first step. There's some kind of distributing to do. The 0.10x stays the same, plus 0.15 times 6,000 is 900. You do that on your calculator. 0.15 times negative x is minus 0.15x equals 850. Now we've got like terms on the left-hand side, 0.10x minus 0.015x. When we combine those, we get negative 0.05x plus 900 equals 850. We've got the variable term on the left-hand side. We need the constants to the right, so subtract 900. And we end up with negative 0.05x equals negative 50. We can divide both sides by negative 0.05. A negative divided by a negative is positive. 50 divided by 0.05 is 1,000. So x equals 1,000. we were asked how much she invested in each stock. So now we can go back to the investment, which is the principal column, and come up with our solutions. The first account was simply X, so that's $1,000 at 10% profit. And the other investment would be 6,000 minus 1,000, which is 5,000. 5,000 at 15% profit. Now, if you multiplied those out, $1,000, 10% of 1,000 is 100. 15% of 5,000 is 750. And we can see that those two do add up to be 850. So the solution is good. So again, we set up a table similar to the mixture problems. I wrote the rate second, that's taking the place of the strength, which we wrote first, but it really doesn't matter when we're multiplying. The order doesn't matter at all. And typically, the profit from each investment should add up to be some total. All right, let's try one more like this. A little difference on this one, though. An investor invested a total of $10,000 in two stocks. Last time it was $6,000, now we've got $10,000. No difference there, really. The first stock earned a profit of 5%, and the second stock showed a loss of 25%. The loss is the difference in this problem, so that's a negative return. If the investor's total loss from these two stocks was $700, how much did she invest in each stock? So one of our profits is going to be negative, but we're still going to find the sum of the profits to get the total profit. So again, we've got stock number 1, stock number 2, and a total. Principal, the amount invested. R for rate, the profit rate. Again, time, it doesn't mention here, so we can just assume that it's 1. And finally, the interest column is really the profit column because it's not an interest. Anyway, done the same way. So we know the total invested was $10,000. And from the last problem, we know that if we let the first one, the first principal be X, the second one's going to be 10,000 minus X. The rate of return for the first stock was 5%, so 0.05. The second one was a loss of 25%. We write that as negative 0.25. We don't know the rate for the total, and that's okay. The time, again, we can assume that's 1. And we multiply for each investment to get the profit. So X times 0.05 is 0.05X. The other one is going to be negative 0.25 times 10,000 minus X. And we know that the total loss tells us that it's going to be negative, was $700, so that's negative 700. Again, the first two, when we combine those, find their sum, it will equal negative 700. That's our equation. So let's write that down. 0.05x minus 0.25 times 10,000 minus x equals negative 700. We'll begin by distributing the negative 0.25 into the set of parentheses. You still have 0.05x. Negative 0.25 times 10,000 is negative 2,500. Negative 0.25 times negative x is plus 0.25x equals negative 700. We have like terms to combine. 0.05x plus 0.25x is 0.30x minus 2,500 still equal to negative 700. Add 2,500 to both sides to isolate the variable term. Negative 700 plus 2,500 is 1,800. So we have 0.30x equals 1,800. Divide both sides by 0.3 or 0.30. And let's see, we have 6,000. Try that on your calculator. But 1,800 divided by 0.3 is 6,000. We needed to know how much was invested in each stock. So again, that first one was simply X, that's 6,000. The other one is 10,000 minus 6,000, or the amount that's needed to make the total 10,000, and that's going to be 4,000. So we could write something like this: $6,000 at 5% profit and $4,000 at 25% loss. That'll do it for these investment problems. Again, typically they're taught in terms of interest. You know, two bank accounts pay this amount of interest. How much was invested in each to get a total of this amount? But I think the problems involving investments in companies, stocks, whatever it may be, are more realistic. Because if you had two bank accounts that paid different interest rates, you should really only put your money in one of them. Anyway, enough of that. That's the end for this section, applications involving linear equations. In the next set of videos, we'll move on to the next section.